Hi, it's Rachel Maldonado. Belief in the human spirit and desire to connect is the reason I want to tell your story and mine. And I am with Pete Parada. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you, Rachel.
And Pete, I know you're a musician. Tell me about that.
About being a musician. Yeah, well, as we talked about earlier, we're flaky. But no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm a primarily a drummer. I've been with, tons of different bands over the last couple decades. Started out doing more heavy metal stuff and then veered into punk rock with bands like Face to Face and Saves the Day, the Alkaline Trio. Gone on to work with other groups like Devo and My Chemical Romance, and probably best known for a 14-year stint with the band The Offspring. And now I do a bit more of studio work. I have my own drum studio here in Nashville and composing work for film and television and commercials and stuff. And I've just got home from a tour with another project I work on called The Defiant, which is myself and Dickie Barrett from the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, Greg Camp from Smash Mouth, Johnny Rio from the Street Dogs, and Joey LaRocca from the Briggs. It's kind of like our own little super group that we put together over the last couple of years.
Wow, Pete, honestly, I can't even keep track of that many bands. That's a lot of bands. And do you think that you have to be a certain type of person to be a musician?
Um, I think the personality types vary by the instrument that you're drawn to.
Ooh.
I think if you're drawn to being the singer and needing to be out front, you probably have a lot of ego. You probably feel like there's an importance to you that you have something to say that people should hear. And I understand that, I like that's a big role to step into. I think drummers and bass players, we're a bit more reserved. Like, we are definitely the backbone of the band, and it's the kind of thing that people wouldn't realize on the front end when you go to see a band. You wouldn't be like, oh, wow, that rhythm section is great. That's why the band is good. But if it's not good, you're like, I don't know why I don't like this band. Nothing's gelling. So I think that a good drummer and a good bass player know to, not necessarily take up all the space in the room, but to lay down the foundation for everybody else to follow. And,
Ooh.
guitar players and that type of lead instrument, seem to have a little bit more, they lean a little toward lead singer, a little bit of a bigger personality and stuff like that. I
Mm,
mean, that's kind of the way I see it. Like everyone's got their role to play,
yes.
and everybody can't be the biggest personality in the room. That's it's a little too explosive. You can have about two of those in a group, but after that, you need your position players, and not that anyone has to be docile or I think everyone in a band should have a voice and they should take up that space early on. But when you're talking about on stage and stuff, if everybody's lighting their hair on fire for attention, it's just too much for the audience to take anything in.
Yes. And you said a backbone. Do you mean an emotional backbone or do you mean the musical?
Oh, you're going deep already. Yeah, I mean, emotionally, maybe. I think,
Yes.
you know, I can speak from my standpoint.
Mhm.
When I'm working with a band, doesn't matter who it is or whatever, my job is to pace the set. If we're playing a live show, I'm setting the pace for what's happening between the songs, how fast are the songs going to be played, how much space is there in between. I'd like to know like when the singer is going to have a moment with the audience and stay out of the way of that. Like you want to feel how things evolve, and then kind of you're sort of the director or the conductor of the train every night. You're moving things forward and trying to have a good pace and reading the audience and seeing what's connecting. Like sometimes you just got to move through something like, okay, this isn't happening, let's get to the next thing. So for me, I'm I expect everyone in the band to play to me. I'm not
Mm,
following a bass player who's wandered off the beat. I'm not, I will wrangle them back onto the beat, but I'm not going there with them. Like
yes.
it's for me, it's like, nope, it's right here. I will wait for you to come back to me. And that's the drummer's role. Like somebody has to hold that foundation of like, nope, this is where the song is, come back. So a lot of times in certain bands, I'll spend part of the time on stage wrangling somebody like, oh, the bass player is really dragging here. I got to pull him forward. Oh, my guitar player is rushing again. I got to pull him back. And, it's a lot of, um, juggling of personalities and musical styles to make it feel cohesive. And people always say like you don't if you have a great drummer in the band, you're like the band is only as good as your drummer, right? And
Mm.
a lot of times you won't know it when you see it. You're just like, wow, that band was amazing, but you'll know it when it's not there. And you might not know why, but it makes a huge difference of who's driving the train.
And do the other members of the band, do they know that the drummer is foundational, or does that kind of come with experience?
I think it comes with experience. I don't
Mm.
think, especially when you're a younger musician, a lot of you're approaching it as an individual thing.
Oh,
Like, okay, well, I'm here, and how do I look and sound amazing, and what can I do for my
yes.
show to be great? And I think the more you do this, and the more you play with different people, you realize, okay, it's not about me, it's about us. What's my role here? Where do I fit in to make everyone sound good and everyone look good? And yes, there's moments where I get to step up and shine, but then I pull back to make space for this person to have their moment and stuff. So I think with experience, you can get that. Like there's I mean, I've played with so many different artists. There's plenty of people who never get that. There's plenty of individual journeys that never end for certain people, and they're just on their own adventure, and there's not a whole lot you can do for that. And I tend not to, unless I'm getting paid really well, I tend to not want to stick around in that situation very long.
Yes.
It's too taxing, to be out on the road away from your family, to have to wrangle somebody into a spot that they should know better. So
Mm.
I think as I get older, I'm a bit more selective of what I want to spend my time on and what I want to, take time for. And so if somebody is just, obviously not caring about anybody else in the band or on their own individual journey, I don't have a lot of time for that at this point in my life.
Mm. And when you reach that level where you're selective, do you feel like it's an intrinsic core value? Or do you think that it's also experience that you work up to that kind of bravery for what
Oh,
you
you
will and will not put up with?
you definitely work up to it. I mean, I only
Mm.
came into this version of myself in the last, since COVID hit. I had to make a lot of things change for me and my family and my career in the last few years to where it was like, okay, you know, I I'll briefly recap because I've told this story before, but
Yes.
in 2021, as the COVID vaccines were rolling out, the whole music industry really started clamping down on everybody because it was a bit of a dilemma that they were in because
Right.
the whole world spent a year saying, be afraid, don't leave your house, don't be around people, don't gather in crowds. And all of a sudden, so we were all off the road for a year. Nobody's making any money. And so the industry decided, well, how do we unring that bell? How do we get people
Mhm.
to feel good about going back outside? How do we tell them it's okay now that we've told them that it's not? And
Yes.
so I think the short-sighted, dim-witted approach from the top down of the music industry was, oh, we'll create the thing, we'll call it the fully vaccinated tour. And so now you're setting a precedent that every tour that goes out, you as an audience member can be guaranteed that every person on that stage and in that crew is fully vaccinated and good
Mm.
benevolent souls and up to date on everything and perfectly fine for you to come back out and spend your money on your tickets and
Yes.
come buy our t-shirts and come clap for us.
Yes.
And when it so as soon as that started rolling out, for me, that was a problem because I didn't like what was happening. I didn't like how fast these vaccines were rolled out. I have a history of complications from vaccines, so I was not predisposed to take it to begin with. And so I knew that this was headed my direction. There was a few
Mm.
bands that came out first in the summer of 21 and played some shows for only vaccinated audiences. And that kind of freaked me out to see like, oh
Wow.
wow, they're going hard here, but they didn't. I don't think they counted on that half of the audience was going to be really upset about that. The
Mm.
prevailing narrative was, well, everyone's just going to get this, and you're a terrible
Mhm.
person if you won't.
Yes. Yes.
And for these bands to find out that half their audience was like, hey, even if I got it, you can't force this on people. That's terrible. So pretty quickly that industry realized that, mandating this on your band and your crew was great for business because now you could act like you were great people and come give us your money. Mandating it on your audience was terrible for business. And so that,
Mm.
you know, some artists kept that going longer than others. I think people get caught up into fear, and it's not a judgment thing from me on how anybody handled their time through this. But, for me and for the band I was in, The Offspring at the time, I'd been there for 14 years and I knew that, this was headed my direction. And while I thought we would have some good conversations about it, I certainly had a lot of meetings with my own doctor who, he looked at my medical history, looked at me, said, "Look, you've already had COVID. You're not overweight. You don't take any prescription medications. You don't have any comorbidities. You don't have any
Mm.
underlying health issues, except for that you have a history of bad reactions to vaccines.
Mm.
And so you're not a good candidate for this one," wrote me an exemption. And so I thought, all right, well, we're,
Wow.
we're going to be able to navigate through this. And we were not. I got a call from the band's manager that was just like facing a firing squad of just abuse. And it was like a flamethrower in my face of screaming and belittling and, judging, but also very coercive. And he made it really clear that there was no conversation to be had here, that I was to get the vaccine or I would be replaced. And, I'd been there for 14 years. I thought, wow, there should be more of a conversation than this. I went to the band about it. They backed him up. There was no conversation to be had. Pretty quickly, the whole situation deteriorated to the point where I found out that I was replaced from my Southwest flight app when I looked and my flight to rehearsal was canceled the same day. My access to the band work calendar was revoked. And overnight, myself, my family, my wife and kids, everybody was just erased like we never existed in that realm. And it was kind of brutal. And I didn't expect that. I expected it was going to be a back and forth and we could work something out. Like maybe I'd have to sit some tours out or whatever, but it didn't make any sense the way that it was just overnight, complete radio silence. You're cut off. That's that. Like, we're all done here. You're not doing what we want. I like to say that, for 14 years, I ate every plate of shit that I was served. And the first one that I sent back, I was gone overnight. Like the
Wow.
first, the first no was the last one. And so it was brutal. I had to explain to my kids who grew up with the kids of the rest of the band, like, hey,
Yes.
we're not going to see these people anymore. It wasn't just me that got
Right.
erased here. It was my wife who was friends with all their wives. It was my kids who grew up together. Like it was just such a surreal experience. And it was like this whole COVID saga made people turn on each other in the most bizarre and just cruel ways. And so I took, the better part of a month to try to figure out like, all right, well, what do I do now? Because I'm assuming, all right, well, now I've been removed from this job. Now I'm probably going to be blacklisted in the industry.
Mm.
And so what is my path forward here? Like I'm the breadwinner of this family and this is the
Mhm.
only thing I've ever done. This is where my skill set lies. And talked it over with my wife and finally we just decided, well, nobody's talking about this. Somebody has to
Yes.
say I here. Like I talked to so many people in the industry, crew people, band people. A lot of people
Yes.
felt the same way that I did, but nobody wanted to say anything because it was career
Mm.
suicide. A lot of people got fake cards. My group floated that idea to
Mm.
me and I didn't want to do that because it's like, well, no, now I'm lying. Now my kids have to lie for me. Now my wife has to lie for me. And to me, it was like, this isn't done with these two shots. Like, this is going to continue. There's going to be
Right.
boosters. I was told I was crazy for suggesting that. Like, was told I was crazy for pointing out a lot of things. Every bit of it that's coming out now, it's all come true. So for me, it was just really hard to uh, not I don't have a problem with difference of opinion. Like I like
Yes.
conversations. I like a debate. For me, it was the smugness and the
Mm.
self-righteousness of no, you're wrong, you're crazy, we're right. This is the only way forward. We're done with you. That's to me is the hurtful part. Like the band stuff, whatever. It's a job, it's a gig. But the to have people that you spent that much time with, like some years you're on the road with your band more than you're home with your family. and to
Right.
just be so smugly dismissed was really brutal. So, I put together a statement. I just, number one, wanted to let people know, hey, I'm out of work. I need a
Mm.
gig. There's got to be
Yes.
somebody out there for whom this isn't a deal breaker. And number two, I wanted to show my kids like there's no situation that you should give up your
Wow.
bodily sovereignty. Like
Yes.
there's no job, there's no opportunity, there's no amount of money that you should do something that you know isn't right for you, isn't safe for you. And number three, I wanted other people to know that they're not the only ones that felt this way. Like there's somebody out here that's willing to say something, even if I'm a tiny, tiny person in this industry and it's a drop in the bucket. Somebody should stick their head up and say, this isn't right. Because if it's happening to me, it's
Yes.
happening to crew members, it's happening to everyone. And everyone was leaned on and everybody was coerced into this. Either you get it or you are
Mm.
not just outcast, you are the worst person. You are, I got called everything from a grandma killer to a racist to a fascist. And I'm just like, do you understand what that word is? I don't I can like it was insane. Like the messages that I received online were, wishing for my demise, for my family's demise. It was intense. But the beautiful thing of it was, when we put this statement out, I just expected a firing squad. And what we received was overwhelming support from around the world. And it was the same story over and over. Thank you so much for saying something.
Mm.
I thought I was the only one that felt this way. And I realized, like, oh, the propaganda around this issue was designed to make you feel like
Ooh.
you are the only one. No one's allowed to talk about it publicly, so you must be the only one that feels this way. You're a weirdo, you're an outcast, you're crazy, so you better just stay quiet. And so more and more people, were coming out of the woodwork like, "Hey, I feel like this too," or "I don't want to get it," or 6 months later people going,
Right.
"I got it and now I don't feel good about it." And my point was never to tell anyone, hey, this is wrong, don't get it.
Mhm.
It's not up to me how anybody else wants to live their
Yes.
lives. I wanted to be free to make that choice for myself and for my family, and it should not have had to be a avalanche on my life and on my career, that there's this one issue where even medically, I had an exemption. And that was another thing to say, because everybody that was
Right.
pushing for this like to stand back and go, we've all got to get it for the people that can't. And you'd be like, oh, here's my exemption, I'm one of those people. And it's like, no, you don't count. I'm not talking about you, we're talking about the nameless, faceless people that make us look good. And so it was, the whole thing was nonsense. It was, nobody believed in anything they were saying. It was just, we're on the good team, you're on the bad team. And, so my band went, easily replaced me, went out on tour, and I start getting messages from other bands on these festivals going, why are you not here? We're not vaccinated. Nobody cares. Nobody asked for anything. Like, this is dumb. And I was like, I know that. You know that. I tried to point that out, that this wasn't the ocean wave that they thought it was going to be. Like, this wasn't something that couldn't be dealt with. I knew musicians out there traveling on a medical exemption, much like mine, absolutely
Yes.
accepted. So it wasn't about that. It was like, we're, to me, it just felt it's not worth the effort to go through for you to be involved here. It's
Mm.
easier for us if we can say fully vaccinated tour, you're being difficult. So that's that. And
Mm.
so it was a really terrible time for me and my family. It was, obviously I was depressed and kind of shell shocked of like, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know who I'm supposed to be. Like it was like an identity death of,
Right.
if I'm not this person in this band, who am I anymore? And thankfully my wife and my two daughters, like
Yes.
someone had eyes on me at all times for about a month straight. Like they made
Mm.
sure I was, you know, looked after. I wasn't in a good place. But they the three of them were the ones that showed me who I was outside of this,
Wow.
that, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a, member of my community. I'm still a musician. I still have something to offer. This situation doesn't define me. And I always say, like, I'm not a victim here. Like, there's plenty of people that this happened
Yes.
to. I was just one of the few that was willing to point it out and say something. a lot of people just left the industry, went on to do other things, kind of didn't say anything, didn't want the social outcast label of it. And, and so many people with much bigger platforms than me reached out
Yes.
to me privately going, man, I admire what you did. I wish I could say something, but I don't want it to, cost me
Mm,
anything. And I'm like, all right, but where's your line? Like
yes.
how many things are you gonna erode? How many of your rights are you gonna allow to be eroded before you say that's enough? And for
Mm,
the other people that were like, well, I'm a good person, I'm on the right side of history, I would just be like, well, but you are given this list of boxes that you have to check to stay in the good people club, and it's updated every day. And as soon as you
mm.
miss one of them, the rest of them don't
Ooh,
matter. You haven't built up any capital, you don't have any equity here. If you won't keep up with the current thing, you're out of the club. And I was trying to point that out to people. Like it took
yeah.
one thing here. I'm not going to get this shot. Oh, I'm out.
Mhm.
Eventually everyone's going to bump into this thing. And I think people
Yes.
get scared of the cancellation. Like, I've got plenty of friends that are super supportive, and my
Yes.
buddies all around, except for online, will not associate with me, not going to follow me,
Mm.
But I know they're reading what I'm saying because they'll be, when we hang out, it's like, man, when you wrote that thing about this and that, it was so cool. And I'm just like, oh, I didn't realize you saw that since you don't follow me. But everyone gets afraid that the cancellation thing is like infectious, like it's going to spread. And what I try to say is, speak your mind. Yeah, it sucks in the moment, but the cancel mob burns so hot and so fast that
Yes.
if you just stand your ground, stand behind what you said, it's going to burn over you, and it's going to move on to somebody else the next day. Like we're every day these people wake up looking to who we mad at today, who we outraged at today,
Mhm.
and waiting for marching orders. And it's just disgusting to have to watch that happen. And it's like, oh, you don't have to exist in that environment. And I think what people don't understand when you go through something like this, that's, a quote unquote cancellation or whatever, it's very freeing because you're like, well,
Ooh,
now I don't have to sit here hiding or squirming or worried that I'm going to say
yes.
the wrong thing or the bad thing, or now I'm not on the good team. It's like, no, be your own team. Like there's no teams out there. Like there's no good people and bad people. We're all complicated, different human beings. We have different life experience. We have different things that no one's going to understand unless they go through it, and for me, with the situation, it was very much like that. It's like, okay, well, nobody understands a medical history like this unless they've had it, unless they've had these reactions before. And so for a lot of people, nothing is real until it hits them personally. and
Ooh,
and I don't hold it against anybody that they don't understand. Like, and I'll show up for most every conversation if somebody
yes.
wants to really talk about it, as long as they're showing up in good faith. If they're just there to scream and they're committed to misunderstanding me, I don't have time for that. But if you're legitimately like, hey, why do you feel this way, or why, explain to me, you know, what makes you have this point of view, I'm always open to that. I love free speech, and to
Yes.
me, when we give that up, all our other rights stem from that. And when there's this much censorship out there online about things that, people lost, doctors lost their careers pointing out things that now are getting admitted to in Congress, like, oh yeah, the 6 foot social distancing, that wasn't based on anything, somebody, we don't even know where it came from. Like, but things that were fed to you as mandates, as the law,
Mhm.
as you have to follow this, it come to, finding out that it's finally coming out that it was all nonsense. Like, I just hope people understand that, so when something like this happens again, they don't just immediately, turn all their rights over, and, giving
Mm.
up their freedom for the illusion of safety. And I
Ooh.
think people get caught up in that. And if there's anything that's been the glaring lesson of the last few years, it's that. It's like how quickly people were willing to give up all kinds of their rights and their freedoms because they were told it would keep them safe. And, if the
Mm.
government can take away your rights under an emergency, they will create an emergency to take away more rights. Like it's always going to go like that. So I guess that's a long-winded way of, of answering your question, I hope.
Wow. I love that you made the public stand at great cost and is the dirty secret in the industry. A lot of people think like you, a lot of people have fake vaccine cards. Is this an open, dirty secret?
Yeah, it's not open, but it's a, I think it's getting less and less secret now that
Mm,
the narrative is shifted. Like the people who were at the time that when I got fired, like the people who were screaming that everyone
yes.
needs to do this and everyone needs to get vaccinated and
Mhm.
everyone, you're a terrible person. Those people are real quiet now. The
Ooh,
and so it's like, okay, cool. Well, the narrative shifted and you were a
yes.
big, strong, tough guy then, and
Mm,
now you don't have anything to say. And to me, I just feel like there needs to be some accountability for how wrong
yeah.
so many people got this, because otherwise you're just going to do it again. And I hate when anybody goes, well, it's fine how I treated people because, we didn't know any better at the time. And it's like, no, I told you better. I gave you information.
Ooh,
You dismissed it. You wouldn't listen to it. You called it crazy. Now all that information has come to light to be fact. And so, no, you don't get to go, well, so and so got lucky and predicted a couple things, or, but
mm,
I did the right thing because that's what we were told to do. And it's like, it's not always the right thing to do what you're told to do. Like you find out who you are when you have to stand up against something that you know isn't right. And again, it's not a judgment on you
mm,
take this medical intervention or not. It's where is your line as a person?
mm,
Why do you feel like if and you have any say on this outside of your own body, like, hey, I'm going to get this for myself and my family. I feel it's going to be protective. Good. I'm glad. I hope
yes.
that's good for you. I'm not going to do that for myself and my family because I don't feel the same way as you. That should be allowed. That shouldn't be an issue, and it shouldn't be, up for debate that there's black and white here. You either do this or you're the worst person on earth. And it's really been eye-opening to watch the
Mm,
loud screamers kind of fade into the shadows
wow.
now. They don't have anything to say anymore. So and but I just feel like if you're going to come around and say something like, "Well, we didn't know any better," that's not good enough. Like I've had people
Mm,
who abandoned me and my family. Like, I mean, the amount of people that unfollowed me online, which is a silly litmus test, but you can see
right.
it in real time, like the people that ran away from you and your family in your darkest time, for some of them to come back around and shoot me a text like, "Hey, it's been a long time." It's like, nope, try again. Like,
Wow.
there needs to be some acknowledgement, even if it's as simple as, "Hey, I'm really sorry. Like, I got carried away in that. I got scared to be associated with you. Like, your public firing squad was hard to watch. Like I was
Yes.
worried about how that would affect me, and I was a coward. Like I'm sorry that
Yes.
yeah, I wasn't there for you and your family. What can I do now? I'd like to be back in your life." Like a simple apology. "Hey,
Mm,
I was wrong." Even that, three words. "I was wrong." Cool. We can start from there. But
yes.
just like, "Hey, bro, it's been a while." No, no,
Mm.
that's not enough.
Were you shocked at the moral superiority?
I shouldn't have been, but like I said, that was the most painful part, is that you're
Yeah.
dealing with people who know you, who've lived with you, who've
Ooh.
spent time with you, and for them to just be like, You've changed, and I don't know you, and why are you doing this?" And it's like, why
Mhm.
am I doing this? I'm the same person that I've always been. I'm not different. This is where I'm at. I physically can't do this. Here's my doctor's exemption. No, we don't buy that. We're not taking it. Like it was, and
Yes.
we're
Wow.
so smug, and your
Mm.
views are extreme, and you need to seek out mainstream sources. And the things that I was told from around
Wow.
people all over the industry who were mad about my stance is just like, I don't know that you get to tell people that, you're so right here because you're on the side of the majority that you think. But I talk to people. This wasn't some decision that was made lightly.
Mm.
I talked to as many people as I could in the months leading up to that because I knew it was coming,
Yeah.
and some people were the majority of people I talked to were like, "Well, everyone's going to have to do this, so there's nothing to talk about." And my wife and I kind of got into it with some friends of ours at the time who were in the industry, and the husband was just like, "Well, what's he going to do? Just not be a rock star anymore? Like this is dumb. He's not going to give up his whole career over this." And it's like, "You're not hearing us. This isn't physically an option for him. Like I'm not going to do this." And so many people were just very smug of like, well, we don't have any choice.
Wow.
It's either this or nobody gets back to work. And it's like, that's not true. If enough people stand up and go, hey, this isn't right, there should
Yes.
be a choice here, then we have options. But if everyone just folds before there's even a battle.
Yes.
Like this wasn't even mandated yet. You could see it coming and everybody was folding already. Like, well, I got to get back
Mm.
to work. And, one of my guys, the last thing he said to me was, you're ruining all my plans. And it's like, all right, sorry that my personal choice and my medical history interferes with your plans, but that's not a good reason for me to ignore, my own heart and my own knowledge of myself and my body here. Like that's nonsense. So it was, in my estimation of the people that I talked to, and again, small litmus test of the people I know in this industry. Some people, as a small portion of people, were like, no, it's the right thing to do, and I feel good about it now. I was relieved when I got my second shot, and I passed my 2 weeks after, and now I'm protected. And then a month later, they're like, I've got COVID,
Yes.
over and over and over. Or I don't understand. I'm fully boosted, and this is my fifth round of COVID. Why is this happening?
Mhm.
That's where we're at now. But at the time, it was like, no, small amount of people felt good about it and that they did it because they wanted to. A lot of people got fake cards because they were
Ooh.
like, I gotta work, I gotta take care of my family.
Yes.
And I was like, cool, I don't have a judgment for anybody. I wasn't gonna do that because I didn't want to lose my voice in all of this, but I don't have a problem with anybody that did that. I know plenty of people that did that and took care of their families, and that's fine. And there was a lot of people who were just like, I do not want this, and left the industry, went somewhere else that it wasn't going to be an issue, or, got fake cards to keep working. But
Mm.
I talked to more people
Yes.
who the amount of people who felt good about it and got it because they wanted to was very small in the circle of people that I talk to. And I talk to a lot of people. I'll
Mm.
have a conversation with damn near anybody as long as you're showing up to have a legit talk. And I think a lot of people were curious, like, hey, why did you do this? Why, you had this job, you were making good money, and it's just like, at some point you got to go that there's something more important than this. And for, I like to ask, where's your line? For me, my line was my kids. I have two
Oh,
daughters who are now 20 and 16, but at the
yes.
time they were, 4 years younger. And when your kids are teenagers, they stop listening to you, but they're watching. They watch
Oh,
what you're doing, right? And
yes.
they see how you act, and that's what they're taking in. And I was like, all right, well, I've got to show them how important this is to me and how strongly I feel about this. Like, watch dad set his career on fire over this
Mm.
line because I'm not going to cross this. It's too important to give up this much of yourself for something that's it's not worth it. It's insignificant. No amount of money is worth, giving up this part of you. And I had a friend of mine about a
Mm.
year and a half ago just say, yeah, but did you really make a difference at all in all this? And I was like, no, he didn't mean it in a derogatory way. Like, I took it with the best of intentions. I know his heart. I know what he meant. And I was like, well, I wasn't trying to change the world. I'm not delusional. Like, I'm a drummer in a punk rock band. Like, nothing that I said was going to carry the weight of the world on it. But my audience wasn't the world. My audience was these two girls. Like, that was, to me, if I get through to them,
Yeah.
worth it. And,
Wow.
I feel like I did. And I think it was. So,
So your line in the sand, Pete, it is family.
yeah. Yeah. And your kids, like, to me, it's like we protect kids at all costs. And if I'm not showing them this lesson, like, you get
Yes.
moments in your life to show your kids a lesson. Like,
Mm.
and the really big ones are the ones they carry with them. And I was like, well, this is the biggest one. I'm going to lose everything here.
Yes.
But
And
they
your
need to see it.
girls, your
Yeah.
wife, your daughters, are they proud of you? They saw this. They
I
saw how strong you are.
I think so. I think so. Um, I'm proud of them. We all went through this together. This wasn't
Wow.
like I might have been the public face of this, but
Mhm.
everybody lost something here. My kids were very big in the musical theater community here,
Mhm.
which, the theater community at large went real hard on COVID, real hard on vaccines. And, so their opportunities were limited because of my stance, and we talked about it as a family, like, hey, this is going to affect all of us, but for me, it was my oldest daughter, sorry, at the time was just like, if, you know, she's like, I understand why you're doing this. If you get a fake card, you're lying, then I'm lying.
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah, we're not going to put you in that position. But for her to even be able to go, no, you can't get a fake card here. You have to, that for me was huge. That it's like, okay, she sees it, she gets it. Like,
Yeah.
this is it's more important than opportunities. And even though it cost her
Yes.
something and her sister something. Yeah.
You protect your children because the short-sighted, all those others in the industry, "Oh, I'll go on tour, I'll make money." But then the long game, thinking far out, the side effects. For your children, you thought for the long term to actually protect them, how they're going to feel, how they can be strong themselves. Like you actually protected your children. Even
Yeah.
though there's short term pain, you showed them how to do it the right way and you actually protected them for the long term.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife and I together, I mean, because we make all decisions as a group here. The four of
Mm,
us have been through everything together. I mean, my wife and I especially, we've been married 18 years now, been together
wow.
19, and it's,
Wow.
you go through so many hard times, but this was the hardest. My
Mm,
kids had to watch me like in a ball on the floor in a panic attack trying to make this decision, trying to figure out like what are we doing here? What are we giving up? How am I going to support my family? How do I take care of you if I'm not working? If I can't work, if I don't get this, I can't work. And for them to be like, we'll figure it out, we'll find a new way, and
wow.
to do that together as a family has been, probably the biggest blessing of my life. And to have I've got great friends and family that don't agree with me one bit on any of this, and
Yes.
they couldn't be more supportive of all of us, and those are the people that you need, the ones that run towards you, even if they're like, hey, I don't agree with it. I don't
Yes.
feel the same way as you. I love you. I'm here. What do you need? And people are like, well, then what do you talk about with people like that? I'm like, anything but COVID. Like, who gives a shit? Like, this isn't the only thing in the world.
Right, right,
Like,
right.
so for those people, like that's the important stuff for me. The people we lost, yeah, that was hard, that sucked, and that was painful. But the people that run towards you, a friend of mine that hit me up a couple months after this happened and was like, "Hey, you playing drums?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to play music. I don't know what I'm doing." He's like, "Got to get back on the horse," and he drove down here with a buddy of his because to my studio, and he's like, I got some songs. We're gonna come down. We're gonna make a record at your place. We're gonna get you back on the drums. And like that pulled me back into
Mm.
music. That pulled my focus back to understanding like, okay, yes, these people could remove me from that job. They can replace me in that space. I don't need their permission to continue creating. I
Oh.
don't need their permission to keep making music. Nobody gets like, cool, you can pull your band away from me. I can't stop that, but I'm going to keep working. And the new things that I've launched myself into with my own songwriting, my own composing, like finding this other voice of my own has been
Ooh.
huge. And it's a battle. 2.5 years later, we're still clawing our way back, like financially and stuff, like but it's come together and it's working, and it feels so rewarding to have done what was right for myself and
Wow.
my family, and for it to finally be paying off in a way where it's like, oh, I can support my family outside from being that guy that played drums in that band.
Ooh.
And also to find my own creative voice, because when you're in different groups, and especially as a drummer, you come in,
Yes.
a lot of times our job is to replace someone who was already there,
Ooh.
that maybe they
Yes.
they want to
Yes.
change out for personality or for playing or for whatever. So you come into a situation like that and you don't have any power there. You're not in charge of anything. You're fed your script and they'll make it look, they'll put you in the photos and make it look like everyone's one big band, but there's one or two people that are in charge and everybody else just gets their marching orders. And for me, it was a real eye opener to realize how stifling that was. Like, yeah, I was paid really well to do that script. I did it really well
Mm.
every night over and over for years and years. And to finally realize that's like, oh, but I wasn't happy. Like I was
Oh,
providing, but I was creatively stifled. I didn't
wow.
get to bring any of myself to that job. I just, you know, played this acted the script that was presented. And so to be able to finally explore like my own creativity and to realize like, oh wow, I've got a lot more inside of me that I want to get out. And I was just kind of, for lack of not to be derogatory, but it was kind of a waste of my time to be in the service of somebody else's vision for so
Mm.
long and not paying attention to my own creative heart and what I wanted to get out in the world. So it's really right now in my life is a super exciting time to be involved in so many different projects and different people, but new things that I've never done before. And so that for me has been the blessing in all this. The people that stayed or ran towards me and my family in our darkest moment, and to also find this new side of myself that I ignored or didn't even believe was there.
Wow. Beautiful. And Pete, my last question for you. What makes you feel alive?
Hmm. I think creating. I guess
Oh,
it's twofold because for me everything starts with my family. So my wife and my
mhm.
kids. To every day that I wake up and I'm here and I'm with them, that's enough. And that gets me excited to come down here to the studio and create. Like there to start with, like a writer will say, we start with the blank page and
Mm.
then out of it you pour something out and edit and it's but you made something out of
Yeah.
nothing. And so I'm constantly fascinated, I think, with a new focus on music and what it can
Mm.
do for people. Because it's, my career for so long was like, well, I'm a drummer. I'm
Yes.
gonna run the train over here, and I'm good at it, and I'll keep everybody in line, and I'm gonna make this band better. That's my job. And in here, it's like, well, now what kind of music can I create that's going to, when you're composing for a film or something and you're
Ooh.
you're looking at a scene and going, what can I do here not to get in the way, but to elevate the audience's experience and to really dive into understanding how much music affects every aspect of our lives, it's not just background noise while you're cleaning the
Mm.
kitchen or driving in traffic, it can really have a profound effect on you. Like, there's certain things, sensory things in your life that you can always go back to, like a smell. Like I can smell a certain thing and it'll take me back to my grandmother's kitchen, right? Or I
Oh,
can
yes.
have a taste and it'll remind me of something my mother made. But you can hear a song and it can take you back to the time you first
Mm.
heard that or when it was important to you or it helped you through like that hard time. So I think, not to be overinflated
Yes.
about it, but I think there is an importance to art and there is an importance to music that, our lives would be all the worse without it. And so it's
Mm.
it's exciting to kind of approach it from that other than just,
Yes.
all right, I'm the drummer, I'm here to make this band better. It's like, okay, well, outside of the drums now, how can I make this better? How can I make this better? How can I elevate it with something more than just drumming? And so it's exciting for me to kind of have opened up this new side of myself creatively and so that's what makes me feel alive every day, like my family and creating it. Like that's what keeps me going. Other than
Mm.
that, everything else, I'm good. That's all I need.
I love it. Thank you so much. Your story is incredible. It's beautiful. And I thank you so much for being strong.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for
you
having me.
so much, Pete
Yeah,
Parada.
my pleasure. Thanks for having me.